They stand among us as guardians, as guides.
Our bioelectric energetic fields do calm down in the presence of trees.
Ancient grandmothers and grandfathers that have seen the tests of all time.
Nature's generative power is really unfathomable to us.
Their whispers float along the wind as they wait for us to stop and listen.
When we settle into a more somatic experience, we open ourselves up to receive.
O sacred forest, what wisdom will you share?
This is not a mechanical Newtonian universe. This is an alive, enchanted, sentient, conscious universe, and we are in the body of it.
Welcome. You have entered the realm of 1111 Talk Radio. Your host is Simran. It's time to discover your own language with the universe. Empower yourself, broaden your mind, open your heart, and discover who you are. Now, here's your host, Simran.
There's a dampness in the air. I can hear the birds, the rustles of animals. Oh, come into the forest with me. I know when we first start, there's probably going to be lots of thoughts, but the deeper I step, the more I connect. The silence settles in, and all I hear is the crunch of the leaves under my footsteps, or the sound of my breath as I move forward. And then, when I decide to sit, to lean in against the ancients, the grandmothers and the grandfathers, I wait. I wonder. I listen. I heal. Oh, to sacredly bathe in the forest. Dee Davidson says we can open up to the spaciousness and delight of being in a fragment of the wholeness that once was, a remnant of the glory of the biosphere Earth created over eons. I can be part of this eternity. I can become one with it, and it can become one with me. Today's show, I'd like to welcome you into walking into the forest, to discovering it with a new set of eyes, a new set of ears, and perhaps a new mind, to give you a refuge from the busyness, the distraction, and the noise of the world, to let you remember that there's magic, there's wonder, and it lives among us. It's free. It's always ready and waiting. Dee Davidson lives in the redwoods of Northern California, where she has fallen in love with the ancient trees. She has worked as a creative writing, piano, and elementary school teacher, and she's the author of a number of children's books, including Wind, which won the Nautilus Award, and The Miracle Forest, a Spanish-English picture book telling the true story of how a sustainable community in Colombia found a miraculous way to restore rainforests. Today, we are discussing her book, Sacred Forest Bathing, The Healing Power of Ancient Trees and Wild Places. Welcome, Ellen, to 1111 Talk Radio. I can't wait to take this walk through the forest with you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so delighted to be here.
That is one place that it does seem like the whole world disappears. I wonder how many people take advantage of that. You've been so fortunate to be able to live somewhat nearby where you gave that to yourself. And in this busy world, in this noisy world, in this time where it's so easy to get caught up in the distraction, in the fear, in the rhetoric, in all the things that continuously happen outside, it almost seems like the forest is an entry point to return to ourselves. Can you talk a little bit about how this journey began for you and how you came to hear the trees?
Yes, I agree 100%. It is an entry point into another world where we find the magical parts of ourselves and our interconnectivity and our belonging. How I stumbled into this was 33 years ago when we moved to far Northern California, and there's an old growth redwood tree that borders my backyard. And that tree started visiting me in my dreams almost every single night, showing me mushrooms. This was before we knew about the mycelial web that connects trees through their roots, and they communicate through those roots what they need in terms of nutrients. So I didn't know about that. And the tree was showing me the energy radius it put out and how multidimensional it was, connecting heaven and earth. At the time, I did not believe a tree could be sentient or communicate to me in my dreams at all. That was so far out of my range of the possible that I wrote all my dreams in my journals and interpreted them as the tree represents the part of me that is. Well, I don't think that anymore. And so that was my first invitation to a much deeper and more conscious relationship with trees.
I loved how you started off the book with Grandmother Dragon Tree. And I've always looked at trees as grandmothers and grandfathers. I've not had the opportunity to experience the tree actually talking to me in the way that you have, but there's always this comfort level. There's always been this feeling as if they were protecting me, guiding me in a way that perhaps I didn't hear, but there would be instantaneous knowings, or all of a sudden I would just feel their energy kind of wrap around me. And so I've always found homes that were very much nestled in the trees. It's quite comforting, especially when it comes to trauma or settling the nervous system. We do have a lot of people that are experiencing trauma or getting in touch with wounding and trauma that they've experienced. Being in the forest or connecting with trees can be a really healing effect for that. I know you had your own experiences of requiring healing. How did the trees to support you?
Thank you for the question. Yes, what you're saying is actually proven. Our bioelectric energetic fields do calm down in the presence of trees, and there's all kinds of studies. How it happened was so unexpected. About 17 years ago, I was practicing meditation as one of the many things I tried to heal from fibromyalgia, chemical sensitivities, constant muscular skeletal pain. I caught every cold that came down the pike. I could never sleep, and I was just basically a wreck. At that point, I'd tried so many things. They'd helped, but nothing had ever worked, and I'd given up. I'd resigned myself to living my life tired and with some amount of pain. But I was practicing meditation, and the Tibetan Buddhist Vajrayana lamas suggested we follow the juice. And by that, I thought he meant what gives us more vital life force energy. On free days, when I didn't have to do something, I started playing a game with myself, and I'd wake up and say, what do I want to do today? And every single time it was go to the forest. I am lucky. There are ancient redwood forests within half an hour of my house, either north or south. So I started this forest bathing odyssey 17 years ago. I had never heard the term forest bathing. The Japanese had not released their studies on all the healing benefits. They call it Shinrin Yoku, which basically is a term that means forest bathing. But I went. In the process of being quiet, walking and then sitting, sometimes I do yoga on the flat duff, and listening to the birds and the water, I started feeling better. And it was so gradual, almost imperceptible, but I'd come home and say, wow, I slept well last night. Oh my goodness, I can turn my neck. The diesel didn't give me a headache, and so on and so forth. I'm 71 years old and I feel the best I've ever felt in my whole life. And I have to add one thing. This is anecdotal. There's no studies proving this, I have so much more hair growing in. I've got like twice as much hair on my head.
It's easy to dismiss some of our aches, our pains, our discomforts, the different ways that the body is trying to even indicate to us to take time for ourselves, to love ourselves, to care for ourselves. In forest bathing, there are some things that we want to do to support ourselves. One of them was that we want to do it for a certain amount of time. We want to leave our cell phone turned off or put away. And that there should also be kind of a reverence quality to the experience. Can you speak a little bit more to the timing and how to go about the intention and the entry into a forest bathing experience?
One of the most important things to do is to turn off our phones, our music, our electronic devices. If we go with another person or a group, spread out a little bit and spend a couple hours, 2 to 3 hours, practicing silence so that we can open up and pay attention to what we're sensing, because that's a way to come more deeply into our bodies. And as Simran was saying earlier, she feels this calm and peace around trees. It's true that our bodies are picking up so much more than ever makes it to our minds. I think it's something like 11 trillion bits of information come into our bodies for every 11 that become conscious. When we settle into a more somatic experience, we open ourselves up to receive. And that's really important. There's so much peace in those moments of presence, especially in natural environments.
Was thinking about my son as I was reading your book, and the young people today, they are so inundated with technology. It's really become part of their identity and who they are. And because they have it now all day long in school with their iPads and different things, and then they come home and they do all their studies. And my son is the type, he constantly has those beats in his ears and constantly has music playing. I wonder sometimes if that's even more disconnection from the self. It's really difficult for people to be with themselves, I find. It's difficult for them to be in the silence. Even in speaking to many change agents, people that are involved in the spiritual and self-help industry, I often hear from them how they don't like to be alone and they don't like the quiet. And yet, this is what we teach. This is what we need to do to reconnect to ourselves. How did you step into a place where you allowed the silence more than you were distracted by or addicted to the noise?
It organically evolved, is what I would say, through familiarity. We humans tend to gravitate towards what is familiar and be afraid of what is not. And in our current cultural ecosystem, what is familiar is a lot of electronic, and now we have AI. Yes, the kids are evolving and growing with this interface. Now there's even Neuralink technology that I think the first human was implanted, which will directly connect people to AI. That can be helpful for people that are paralyzed or something. But I think if we're going to preserve and restore and evolve our human potential and our environment, our world, it's really crucial that we balance this with direct sensual contact with the living, breathing earth. It's so beautiful. And beauty enchants us. She brings us into states of awe and wonder. Most people have experienced a moment where a sunset knocked their socks off, or a beautiful flower, a bird song. And these states of awe and wonder are really good for us biochemically. Actually, I think they open up genetic capabilities that are either dormant that our ancestors had because they were all a lot more telepathic with nature than we are now, or might even activate potentials we don't yet know we have. And it can start small. It could just be 5 minutes a day of going out, standing barefoot on the earth and looking at the sky and drinking a glass of clean water with some reverence, some gratitude. But I do feel like we're going to lose more than we even know that we could lose if we don't stay connected to nature. The computer world, the virtual world, the online world, we've created that. And it's going to take us further on a human trajectory. But nature created us. And when we expand out into that entangled weave of vibrant, morphing life, we're going to go into something vast.
The fact that you started the book with beauty to me was really, really powerful because beauty is a part of our essential nature. It does feed our senses in a way that we get back into our body, and that beauty can come through our eyes, it can come through our nose, it can come through all manner of our senses and our listening, as you said. The other part of beauty is it connects us more to the goddess. And creation and creativity all came from Shakti. It all forms from the goddess. And when I think of the forest, when I think of earth, I think of the goddess. Can you speak a little to the interconnection of the forest and our touching the earth, being with the earth, and reclaiming the goddess within ourselves?
We culturally now, during the thousands of years of the patriarchy, have really valued those qualities that are traditionally perceived as masculine. And that's the mental body and figuring things out and taking control, agency, activity. They're good qualities, but the balance, the earth in most spiritual traditions is seen as our mother, and the sky, the sun, the father. And there's a balance in those heaven and earth energies, no matter what spiritual traditions we come from. And unfortunately, during this period of time, we've undervalued the qualities that have been considered feminine and of the earth. Even the word matter is mother in the Latin roots. That's the earth. She's our embodiment. She's our bodies. She's how we are here having this experience. A lot of spiritual traditions have this goal of ascending beyond that. I don't think we'd be here if we didn't want to experience what it's like to live here with all of our senses. The first and biggest goddess is just the earth and this multiplicity of created beauty. It's our human nature to want to offer our own creativity back. So there's a synergistic flow between us and nature. And when we connect, a lot of scientists, artists, writers, musicians have been very inspired by nature in their work. It stimulates our imaginations. There's a state known as soft fascination, which is a state of mind where we're not goal-oriented and directly focused, but we're open and more creative flow happens through us. So there's an invitation there to connect and expand ourselves in those ways.
It is a powerful invitation and one in which I think creates more balance of our two halves because, like you said, we need those other faculties to be in the world, but there's a period of rest and rejuvenation and nourishment that also has to take place. And it's not that the feminine is just receptivity or docile in any way, but it is the sheer power of creation. So when you go into the forest, do you find that you come back more creative, more enlivened, more filled with light, more rejuvenated. Intentionally forest bathing in a way that you're communing with the forest, not just walking through, not just noticing the beauty, but truly communing with it.
When we go into a forest, we're immersing in a field. The field is actually palpable.
Woven throughout Dee Davidson's book are myths and stories, scientific discoveries of the benefits of being in forests and other intact ecosystems, current issues we face like the climate, and how a more conscious relationship with the natural world can offer solutions. Her living, breathing personal experiences of the healing and perceptually enhancing power of spending time in redwood forests and other natural environments is intriguing. I invite you to pick up your copy of Sacred Forest Bathing, The Healing Power of Ancient Trees and Wild Places. You can find out more at her website, ellenddavidson.com. That website is in the bio description below. And I invite you to sign up for her newsletter and perhaps tune into the nature and communication offerings that she is going to be presenting, where you can learn to receive and open to the telepathy with nature. We'll be right back after these messages. Join my Substack. My publication is Beyond the Illusion, and you can find it at iamsimran1111.substack.com. That link is in the bio description. You'll actually receive all of the 1111 magazine issues on audio as part of that, in addition to the weekly prompt, inquiry, contemplation, and meditation that I provide to all of the subscribers on the annual membership. That link is in the bio description.
You are listening to 1111 Talk Radio. Simran is an award-winning author, publisher of 1111 Magazine, powerful speaker of wisdom, and a life mentor. Find out more at iamsimran.com. Now, back to 1111 Talk Radio.
I really enjoy working individually with people. If you're looking for some additional support and guidance, and you really want to dive into the subtle, then there are quite a few options on my website at iamsimran.com that have to do with shadow work or manifestation if you want a more focused approach on a particular thing, as well as individual sessions around deciphering signs, symbols, and synchronicities, gaining a better understanding of how the universe is speaking to you, your particular dialect. That link is in the bio description. Dee Davidson spent hours meditating with the old trees. She was not expecting to spend time in the forest and have it heal her, but it did, and she found herself happier and healthier than ever before. She was not expecting the spirits of the land to speak to her or to take her on a mythic journey that would open her to visionary experiences. But this occurred, and over the years she found herself increasingly able to receive the magical and mysterious wisdom of the trees. Through this book, Sacred Forest Bathing, The Healing Power of Ancient Trees and Wild Places, she shares numerous stories of her own encounters. She teaches you how to settle into the forest more and more. She shares some of the adventures with a friend and the things that they had in common during those experiences. And through the process, she gives you many methods in which you can then experience your own presence and listening with the forest. So I invite you again to find out more about her by going to ellenddavidson.com, picking up her book, Sacred Forest Bathing, The Healing Powers of Ancient Trees and Wild Places, and also exploring some of her children's books like Wind or The Miracle Forest. You can also sign up for her newsletter, and you will find out more about future offerings when it comes to tuning into nature and communication and opening to telepathy with nature. Welcome back, Ellen. What feelings can you share are part of the experience of intentionally forest bathing?
When we go into a forest, we're immersing in a field. And these redwood forests have been around for millions of years. The dinosaurs were romping around. Some of the trees are 2 or even 3,000 years old, which is just amazing. So they're ancient beings. The field is actually palpable. It soothes my nervous system, and that's science. It will do the same to you. People often report feeling a peaceful, calm feeling. The quiet, there's a palpable hush. And that is also scientifically proven. The lichens and moss and substances in the bark, like suberin, muffle sound. Bird song uplifts us. So does the sound of water. We're in this soothing environment, and as our nervous systems calm down, we can run more energy through our bodies because all that stress and tension constricts and contracts us and locks up the energy, the vital life force of our beings. So we're not operating with our full creative capacity. Lots of things happen to me in the forest. It's not one state, and it's not what happens to me particularly that's important, although it's fun to share, because each of us will have our own relationship. It's just like relationships with different people. We bring all that we are, the other person brings all that they are, and then there's the container of the day, the cosmic energies, the energies from the earth, the season. And so every interaction is unique and different. That's the beauty and the magic and the mystery of it, is that we all get to have our own experience. The experience can be a lot vaster than we can quantify with our minds, because our bodies are receiving this, our energetic fields, our whole chakra systems, the layers of our auras. We can be profoundly changed and not even realize it because it's subtle. But repeated encounters are what began to open me up to realize that I had been completely transformed. In fact, if I had to go back to living in my being and body the way it was 17 years ago before I began this forest bathing odyssey, it would feel like putting a straitjacket on. All of my perceptions, my creativity, my spiritual connection would be so much more limited than they are now.
I want to ask one quick question for any listeners that might be saying, well, she lives near the redwoods, so she can do that whenever she wants. I live in the city and I live in a concrete jungle. So what do I do if I can't get out to a place where I can be in nature to that degree? How would you say someone in that frame of mind should approach it? Is this something that we can do in meditation? Is this something that starting off in a park might allow at least some semblance of this? Is it something that maybe making a trip once a month or every couple of months will start to open us to our own relaxation and connection with the earth? How would you suggest someone start?
Well, all of the above, indeed. I do believe that as we restore the natural world, we will be restoring ourselves. So, more parks and trees in cities. But meanwhile, for people that are in deserts, so to speak, we can start by having some houseplants and making ourselves available, tuning in, just spending a few minutes looking at, admiring, watering the plant, receiving what does the plant need, and tuning in that way. For some people, it's going to work better to do it with pets, but that's okay too. Finding the closest natural spots that we can safely go to. And I'm a firm believer that returning to the same tree or rock or river, desert, wherever we find ourselves regularly has a lot of value because it deepens the intimacy. It's kind of like when we meet people and we're drawn and attracted and we hit it off. But it takes time and repeated interactions to really get close. And so that's something that many of us haven't done in Western culture. A lot of people have a bucket list and they go here and they go there and they go another place. And there's nothing wrong with that for a vacation, but to develop the kind of close relationship where we can tune in is easier if we're doing it with the same places. So a park, a tree, even a glass of water. If we really pay attention, bless the water, tune in, and drink it consciously, feeling how these liquid crystals are enlivening the crystalline nature of our own bloodstreams. There's no way to live without nature. We're breathing the air that circulates the planet. We're drinking the water. We're eating the food, and we're held by gravity. So tuning into right where we are is really important. Even in the most concrete of concrete jungles, gravity is still holding us. The ground is still right under there. And honestly, it doesn't take very long for nature to reclaim places when we don't pave them over. A lot of people are experimenting now with letting part of their yard go wild, and it's amazing how fast it happens. Start where we are and appreciate the beauty that is there. Then more of that will come in too, because there's a vibrational reality here of what we focus on, we do tend to get more of. And so if we're focusing on nature and nature's beauty, we might find ourselves going on that dream vacation or spending more time in the park, having natural experiences popping up in our lives.
I want to go back to a word that you used earlier, which I think is probably incredibly important when it comes to forest bathing or even spending time in the park or with a glass of water. And you had mentioned presence. You had also mentioned listening. And these two things are probably the most integral steps that we can take right now to reclaim ourselves, our own agency, our own connection with the earth. And yet these are the two that oftentimes are the most difficult for people to anchor into. I know years ago, I received a mantra while I was in meditation, and that mantra was, "My presence is enough." And we live in such a doing society that deepening more and more and more into that really became like a yogic exercise, because it takes that stretching into doing more nothing, in really allowing the presence to be enough and listening to the body and listening to the surroundings and allowing them to merge. And you have in a couple of places in the book where you talk about being in the forest and all of a sudden, where does the tree end and I begin? Where do I end and the tree begins? Talk a little bit about that level of presence and listening that gets to deepen and how to be with it as we're learning to deepen it.
That was so well said, really beautiful. In a way, our bodies are always present. They're right here, right now. And they're imbibing all these frequencies and energies, and we're just trying to cope and function, which gets pretty mechanical. When we allow ourselves moments throughout the day, maybe 5 minutes, 3 times a day would help to just tune in. Where am I? What am I smelling and seeing and tasting and feeling? How's the air on my skin? That's a way to become conscious of the moment we're in, which is always the moment where we have agency and can influence things in a much more powerful way. And then we'll find we're more effective because we won't be racing along trying to get things done in this frantic way, which has its own energy. But instead, now we're moving from an integrated state. Being in nature really helped me do that because there was a settling. I couldn't get my husband or my two best friends to go with me most of the time, which was a little scary at first, I admit. And I don't necessarily recommend that. I have run into 5 mountain lions, a rutting elk, and a lot of brown bears. But my desire was so high that I just started doing it. I was such a people pleaser. And like so many of us, an empath, so I couldn't really distinguish if somebody else's grief was mine. The emotion would hit me and I'd think it was mine. Well, when I went off alone, no one was watching me. There was no one to perform for or try to please or impress. So for me, that was a time of just being. There was a deep settling. Then to be helped by the bioelectric field of these trees, and the Institute of Heart Math has proven that there's a deep interconnectivity between trees and humans, really allowed that mental busyness to settle and more clarity to come in. As soon as people allow more of this in their lives, I think most people are going to be just like me and get pretty addicted because it feels great. It feels really good. And once any of us have these moments of, I guess we could call it unity consciousness, where we're just present and open attention, relaxed, being in a receptive state, we'll want more. Certainly, nature in all forms is hugely helpful. And again, because when we're admiring something beautiful, for that moment, we're right there. However, we can do that will expand us, and then we can hear, I call it divine nature, the voices of divine nature. There's such a beautiful connection between the angelic realms and the elemental nature intelligences. Through the trees, I often feel them working together, actually. And then we align with that, we start being guided. And this can be subtle. I've read that in this book, The Story is in Our Bones, I read about how Western culture used to, and all kinds of indigenous cultures, of course, make important decisions outside by what were known as council trees. And I have noticed the quality of my thoughts, ideas, visions, creative inspirations is different when I'm out in the presence of wild nature.
In one of the chapters that you have where you're speaking with David of Archangel Ancient Tree Archive, he says, redwood trees act like antennas, bringing in the energies from all sorts of dimensions. Different frequencies of energy are received by different glands. What the pituitary is tuned into differs from what can be picked up by the adrenals. When we really do think about unity consciousness and oneness and how we all are interconnected, it only seems correct that we would heal because we are earth ourselves. Our bodies are earth. They return to earth. I want to go back to when you said people are allowing their yards to grow wild. It made me think of the time of COVID and how nature began replenishing itself. It began healing it. Now, with a lot of the climate issues, with the fires, the floods, the storms, the things that are taking place, have the trees given you any wisdom around how to approach these different things that are happening? And is it part of what the earth is requiring to happen to also replenish itself?
What a great question. I love this one. My little human self that reads the science, I get freaked out. I go into despair. We're past the tipping points. It's hopeless. We're doomed, blah, blah. But when I'm with the trees, that isn't the feeling that permeates my being. It's so much more hopeful because nature's generative power is really unfathomable to us. We humans think we're in control and that we're it. We aren't. We belong to the larger whole. We're part of this incredible interdependent co-arising. That's a Buddhist term, but it really works. And we're arising and evolving along with it, morphing, changing, growing, dissolving into new forms. So the sense that I get from the trees is that all we really have to do is get out of the way, like we did in COVID. And look how quickly many things restored. The air cleared, some of the water cleared, the wild animals came back. Some of them were walking down city streets. It was amazing and it was pretty fast. Just like those little parts of our yard that we let go free and wild, all of a sudden there's bees and butterflies and what we call weeds, but they're blooming and the bees and butterflies love them. I have an actual real life story of how these miracles can happen. I wrote it in a children's picture book, The Miracle Forest, and I think this could happen everywhere all around the world. And that's the sense that the ancient redwoods are giving me too. When people just did their best to find something that would grow on the barren savannas of eastern Colombia, and they finally got tropical Caribbean pine trees to grow. The resin from the trees helped support the community because it's used in everything from paper to paint to glue. And then meanwhile, shaded in the understory of these trees, which helped the soil become less acidic, rainforests that biologists think may not have been in the area for 30,000 years spontaneously regenerated, bringing back over 260 species of flora and fauna, creating potable, clean water. And now they're expanding and planting more tropical Caribbean pines and restoring more rainforests. And this is just an example of how when we humans cooperate with nature and put our best foot forward and just get out of the way and quit cutting everything down and harming the balance, the regenerative power will seem miraculous to us because it's beyond what we could create on our own.
We as humans often interfere in so many places that if we just stayed out of the way, it would allow more of the divine plan to unfold. That oftentimes we're having to go back and fix our issues because we interfered in the first place, and that's then more interference. So,
Yeah.
yes, nature knows what to do. There's a magical quality to your book, too, as you follow along through some of your adventures and your and Allegra's adventures into the forest and discover how the trees are talking to you or how they both gave you the same message. And as I was reading, I kept getting this feeling of Outlander, like there was going to be a portal you walked into. And you speak a bit about Celtic ancestry and having an ancestor emerge from the tree and oftentimes having these quite mystical experiences.
Recently, I was sent a few pages someone had written about redwood tree fairies. They described them as if this is the way they are. And I thought, oh, people will go with preconceptions and try to see that. And I don't think that's how it works. A preconception is us projecting out into nature and the world with our energy, imagination. And that is really a different state of being than softening, opening, receiving with no expectations. So the state of mind I was in most of the time when I was in the forest was not one of expecting to see angels or what I call tree angels or star beings or fairies or being taken through a portal to visit an ancient 800-year ago Celtic ancestress from my maternal line. But all of that happened. It's not on the third dimensional physical plane, but we are living in intersectionality of multiple dimensions. And so how much we perceive I don't know if anyone's old enough to remember that old book Flatlander, and everybody lived in a two-dimensional world and couldn't perceive the third dimension. They could only perceive the line and the dot. And then it's kind of a mathematical, allegorical book, but we're kind of like that. But as but it's our human potential's way beyond that. And lots of people have had experiences where near-death experiences where they've connected with the angelic realms or just connected with the angelic realms because they had that experience. So this is part of our human capacity, and we all have it. The trick to having any of these experiences is just to soften and let it be what it is and not try. Trying just kind of blocks a lot for us. I was circling this tree with prayers. Round and round and round I went. It just altered my state of being completely. And all of a sudden, it was like this holographic, shimmering kind of light being came out of the tree, and she wanted me to go with her. I had a spontaneous shamanic journey. I'm not a shaman. I think I'd been to a shaman twice and had one of those experiences, so I recognized it. I was taken through the roots of the tree down into Ireland to my Celtic ancestress, and they were having a ceremony on the cliffs by the sea around an ancient oak tree. The vision was so real. I actually felt like I was there. The way we do in a really vivid dream, it was dreamy, the quality of it, but it was like that. And she wanted to gift me with damage had been done to our ancestral line, and we lost this nature magic, and she wanted to reconnect it back through me. And I said yes. And ever since, my life has gotten a lot more magical, I have to admit. I did go back to that tree many times, and I've had lots of peaceful meditations and good things have happened, but I never got to go back through the portal, and I've always wanted to. So we don't really control this. It's an arising that happens depending on a multiplicity of factors. It could be the alignment of the stars, where we are in our own frequency and vibration on that day. And who knows? It's a mystery. But there's a lot available to all of us. And I think that's our birthright. This is not a mechanical Newtonian universe. This is an alive, enchanted, sentient, conscious universe, and we are in the body of it.
A lot of it has to do with us being in the Western world. There is this element of control that the ego can want to force. My experience of you, of your energy, of your exuberance and vibrance when you talk about the forest, there's a real childlike wonder. There's an innocence. There's an intimacy that is playful. As children, we look at the forest that way. We look at animals and insects and all manner of creatures from that space. I remember my young son swinging on the swing when he was around 7, and he said, "Mom, did you hear what the wind said?"
I love that. Did you hear what the wind said? I'm sure you didn't, but so many of us grew up with parents that would reply, "That's nonsense. The wind doesn't talk." And then from then on, we've shut that down, or we may have.
Is this a path to allow us to remember ourselves again, to remember the truth of our own nature, our own divine nature?
It is. And our divine nature is not an isolated being. We're in an intricate structure of evolving life. We don't create ourselves outside of this incredible, vibrant web of being. Being in nature helps us feel that belonging. It really is an antidote to this epidemic of loneliness. I don't think it's just forests, but every type of nature, from forests to beaches and oceans and lakes and rivers and waterfalls and rocks and deserts and prairies, they're all going to have their peculiar flavor and style, signature style, will be opened up, but in a unique way, depending on what environment we're in. I really like to encourage people to connect with nature as close to home as possible, whatever you can find close to you, because that will be what's easiest for each person to tune into because we're breathing the air, drinking the water. Maybe if we go to farmers markets, we're eating local food. And so we're in sync on a vibrational, energetic level. That allows us to tune in more easily. I would like to share the way this book was written because I've never written a book like this before. Some of my books have taken a year or even 2 years to write, a lot of plotting and thinking. This book I didn't want to write because I'd been through the writer's gauntlet with publishers going out of business, books winning awards, and then going out of print, and all kinds of things that happened to me. And it was a lot of work, and I wasn't getting a lot of return on the work, or even being able to offer the gift to enough people. It reminded me of cooking a delicious meal and nobody coming to eat. And so I was a little depressed about the whole process, frankly. So when I went off to the forest, I had thrown the towel in on being a writer. That wasn't going to be me. But then what happened is I'd meditate by the trees. And after a few years, I was probably 5 years into the process, maybe longer. And I started having these visions of this book, and had rays of light coming out of it. And I resisted, and I resisted for years. I didn't want to write the book. And I'd say, no, I'm not doing this. So every time I'd go sit down to meditate, the same image would keep popping in my head once I was in an open, spacious, clear place. And finally, I caved in and said, okay, I'll write it. As soon as I did, I went home, and I've never written a book like this. It wrote itself in like 3 months, poured through me. I was higher than a kite. I was in a blaze of light the whole time writing it. If I needed a fact, it would appear on my feed from somewhere instantly that day. And it went on and on like this. I was blissed out the whole time. So what I really think readers may be able to get out of this book, there is a wild elemental tree spirit nature frequency that is being transmitted through the book that can help people calm down, open up, and feel. And that might help when people go and practice communing with a rock or a river or a tree, because I don't really think I wrote the book, to be honest.
I do feel that frequency, that energy coming through the book. And it's interesting how I have come across a few authors that have had a similar experience where a book just immediately needed to come through. My very second book, Your Journey to Enlightenment, was that way back in 2014. I think that books that come through in this way, they really do write themselves. They're meant for a larger reason. They're meant for this time and the times to come. Thank you, Ellen, for being on 1111 Talk Radio. I'm going to share a little bit from Sacred Forest Bathing, the healing power of ancient trees and wild places. Being able to practice forest bathing or any sort of nature therapy requires setting aside a certain amount of time for that purpose. One way is to put visiting your favorite locations on the calendar as a scheduled event. If you have the time to leave some open-ended space in your life, that's even better. It's so lovely to wake up and figure out what we want to do that day. That leaves us available to intuit where we are drawn. Ellen has found that certain spots call to her at different times. When she needs a feeling of spaciousness, the beach is great. For perspective and clarity, she loves to climb a mountain. To relax, laugh, and feel into her playful, feminine otter side, there's nothing like a creek or a river. The forest is fabulous for healing and introspection. And of course, these environments might stimulate you in different ways than they do her. Giving ourselves a little space allows us more room to listen in and discover what our heart and soul desires. This is more than a nature guide. It's a love letter to the living earth and a call to awaken our wild, wise selves. If you've ever felt the trees were trying to tell you something, this book is for you. Pick up your copy of Sacred Forest Bathing, The Healing Power of Ancient Trees and Wild Places. And while you're at it, go ahead and pick up her children's books and pass them along. The first one is Wind, which won the Nautilus Award, and the second is The Miracle Forest, a Spanish-English picture book telling the true story of how a sustainable community in Colombia found a miraculous way to restore rainforests. Find out more at ellendeedavidson.com. If you're looking for some additional support and guidance, and you really want to dive into the subtle, then there are quite a few options on my website at iamsimran.com that have to do with shadow work or manifestation if you want a more focused approach on a particular thing, as well as individual sessions around deciphering signs, symbols, and synchronicities, gaining a better understanding of how the universe is speaking to you, your particular dialect. That link is in the bio description. Thank you so much for spending time. Until next week, I am Simran, in love, of love, with love, and as love. Be well.
Thank you for opening your mind to a new reality, your heart to greater compassion, and your experience of aliveness with 1111 Talk Radio. Join host Simran next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern Time to step through the gateway of conscious living. You are not on the journey. You are the journey.